Alright, to fix this RTC problem, where none of the CMOS settings are being remembered, we're going to have to desolder this chip. And we either have to replace it, or we have to cut into the sides down, well actually it's this side, cut into the side over here and splice in an external battery. This is the first time I've tried to film myself soldering on something, so I don't know how this is going to go. The chip that we're looking at is right here. I do not have a lot of desoldering braid left at this point. So you're going to see me use up a little bit of unused braid, and then you're going to see me trying to find unused spots on previously used braid to try to get this done. Well, there we go. That snapped out a little bit violently. I do not see any lifted traces. That's very surprising. Alright, now what we're going to want to do since we'll likely need to replace this in the future, is install a socket. Okay. Let's see, will that go in, or am I going to have to clean up the holes a little bit more? I think I'm going to have to clean up the holes a little bit more than that. Yep, there we go. We've got the cutout in the socket matched up with the notch on the silk screen. That will help us put the chip in the correct orientation. There we go. tack in 2 corners to hold the socket in place while I do the rest of the soldering. There's our socket in place. And the chip will go in just like that. And now when we've decided how we want to handle the battery situation, we can just unplug the chip and deal with it that way. Alright, I managed to find a battery holder that I could scavenge off of an older project. So I'm going to do the mod rather than replacing the chip. I think the last time I did this, I just did it with an X-Acto knife. I can't remember for sure. I've seen instructions where you do this using a Dremel, but I am pretty sure I just cut it. So let's see if I can do this again. You have to get down to where you can see some metal. I'm not seeing any yet, so I guess I'm not deep enough. Oh, there's a little bit. Alright. Just trying to verify which side of the metal piece to sever. It's the top end. I got it. Alright. So you get that 4th pin over and you sever it. And then you get this 8th pin over here. I guess technically you only need to disconnect the pin from one side, because that should be enough to open the circuit. Let's see, this is a surface mount battery holder. Looks like the side that I severed is the negative side. I need to see if I have some double-sided tape down here. Give me just a second. Alright, I did. It's kind of the thin stuff. It's not the heavy-duty mounting tape like I'd like to use, but it's better than nothing. I'm going to put another piece on top for good measure. Alright. Get some of my wrapping wire to use as an interconnect. There we go. It's a fairly simple little mod. Now I can pop a battery in there and hopefully that'll get me my RTC back on that motherboard, my CMOS settings. As you can see, I've installed the modded Dallas 12887 with the battery. And it gave me a little bit of trouble when I went to boot up the computer. When I went to boot up Windows off the hard drive, it complained about a divide overflow error. And this was before it had even finished loading the DOS portion of Windows. So I couldn't get into Windows, I couldn't get into DOS, I couldn't get into safe mode. So I tried to get into the BIOS setup, and I couldn't get into that either. And my best guess was that the date and time information had gotten corrupted when I severed the internal battery connection and added the external battery connection to the chip. So in order to get this booted, I had to figure out some way to get the date and time set without getting into the BIOS. And the best thing I could come up with was, well, I'll have to make a boot disk for an older version of DOS. I happen to have an XT in the next room over that is running IBM DOS 5, so I booted that up and I made a boot disk on it, and I brought it over here. And I tried to boot using the floppy drive that's up here, and it said non-system disk error, like it wasn't able to read the floppy that I had put in. So what I had to do was I had to get this floppy drive out of my junk drawer and hook it up. Then I was able to boot from it into DOS, and then luckily that worked. If that hadn't worked, I don't know what I would have done. But I set the date and time using the MS-DOS date and time command, and then the computer started functioning properly again. And I went ahead and updated the BIOS to the latest version while I was at it. I was also researching, corruption of the BIOS flash memory as a possible cause of the issue I was having. Turned out to not be the cause of the issue, but I realized during my research that there were at least 4 newer BIOS files available for this machine. So I went ahead and downloaded the latest one I could find, which was, I think, revision 13. And this was on revision 9 when I got the computer. So I did all that, I got everything working, and I decided to go ahead and get the floppy drive, the built-in floppy drive, working while I was at it. Basically all I did was I tried to clean it using a cleaning diskette, and I shot some contact cleaner in and some compressed air to kind of flush out the contact cleaner after I was done. I got it to semi-reliably read disks. Sometimes I have to pop them in and eject them a few times to get them to work, and the 5¼ inch slot wound up being a little bit easier after I finally got it set up in the BIOS.